The flight attendant had just announced takeoff when a little boy in row 8 pointed out the window and shouted, "Daddy, look! Fighter jets!" Heads turned. The single dad beside him, quiet, unshaven, wearing a worn Air Force hoodie, just smiled faintly and said, "Yeah, buddy. That's an F-35 Lightning." But what nobody knew was that every pilot in that formation already knew exactly who he was. Ethan Cole wasn't used to being recognized. These days he was just the single dad with the 5-year-old boy, trying to make it through the chaos of airports and school runs. Once, though, his world was different. He had flown jets that could touch the edge of space. But that life ended the night his wife died in a crash while he was deployed, leaving him grounded in every sense of the word. Now, he worked as an aircraft mechanic in a civilian hangar. The only cockpit he sat in anymore was the one in his son's toy jet. That morning, he and little Jack were flying commercial to Washington, D.C. for Jack's first air show, a trip Ethan had promised his late wife he'd take someday. He'd saved for months. It was supposed to be simple, a weekend trip for a boy who loved planes. As the plane climbed through the clouds, passengers began noticing something strange. 4 F-35s streaked alongside the commercial jet, gleaming silver in the morning sun. It wasn't unusual to see military aircraft, but the way they flew, wing to wing with the passenger plane, made even the captain sound confused when he came on the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, looks like we've got company. Enjoy the view, they're giving us quite the escort." Everyone pressed to the windows, snapping pictures. Everyone except Ethan. He froze. Because the lead jet tilted its wings, signaling something only a former pilot would recognize: the old Air Force salute in flight. Jack tugged his sleeve. "Dad, why are they doing that?" Ethan swallowed hard. "Because they're saying hello." When they landed at Andrews Air Force Base, diverted for what the captain called a security coordination, Ethan assumed there'd been some mix-up. But as soon as they taxied, he saw them, 4 F-35 pilots standing on the tarmac, helmets tucked under their arms, waiting. As the passengers disembarked, a voice broke the hush. "Permission to approach, sir." The lead pilot, a young woman in her 30s, saluted sharply. "Falcon Zero," she said, voice trembling. "It's an honor." The crowd gasped. Cameras went up. Jack looked at his father, wide-eyed. "Dad, they know you?" Ethan tried to speak, but words wouldn't come. The pilot continued softly. "Sir, your mission over Kandahar, you saved 8 of our lives that night. We found your call sign on the memorial wall at Nellis, thought you were gone." Ethan shook his head. "No, ma'am. Just grounded." Before he could react, the entire squadron saluted him, right there on the runway. Even the airline crew stood still. Passengers who'd once seen only a tired dad with a backpack now stared at him like he was something else entirely. Jack looked up, tears in his small eyes. "You're a hero?" Ethan knelt, his voice breaking. "No, son. I'm just your dad." But one of the pilots stepped forward and handed Jack a patch, dark blue, embroidered with a silver falcon. "Then you must be Falcon 1. Jack beamed. The crowd cheered softly. Later that day, at the air show, Ethan stood quietly with Jack on his shoulders. The F-35 squadron soared overhead, their smoke trails forming a perfect falcon across the sky. The announcer's voice boomed over the loudspeakers. "Today's flight is dedicated to retired Major Ethan Cole, call sign Falcon Zero, for valor, humility, and sacrifice." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. Not because of pride, but because his son finally saw who he used to be, and who he'd always tried to be, a man who kept flying, even after the world tried to ground him. Jack whispered, "Dad, can I be like you when I grow up?" Ethan smiled. "You already are, buddy." That night, as the crowd dispersed and the sky turned crimson, one thing was clear: heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes, they sit quietly in row 8, holding a child's hand, never expecting anyone to salute them again.